Hello and welcome to WTPN We the People Network. I'm Doug Mallow and I'm here with my common law specialist and co-host Ed Dolezal. Today we've invited Louise Kingsbury on our show. Louise is the State Communications Secretary and Recording Secretary Pro Tem for the Missouri State Assembly. Louise, how are you? Welcome to WTPN.
I'm great. Thank you so much, Doug and Ed, for having me on.
Ed, you're muted. So you can take off your mute.
Okay.
There you go.
So welcome, Louise. We look forward to our chat today. So thank you for coming on board.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Guys. So Louise, what we'd like to do today is have you share with our listeners, how to set up their county assemblies. I know you've had some great success in Missouri, but first, we'd like to know a little bit about you. I think it's important because our listeners need to know that the assemblies are made up of we the people, and everyone brings a certain skill set to the assembly. I know you've worked with college students doing ethics training and eventually became a teacher. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how your professional training has overflowed into your assembly duties?
Sure. I am married. I do have two grown children. My husband is just as involved as possible in assembly as well. I really do work to turn to God for guidance in everything that I do. So my whole life has been about God and family first. But I love working with people, and that's just what I've done. And that's what being part of the assembly is working with people. I was teaching school before all the current influences in public education came about. And that's why I left teaching and began living and working with college-aged women and then later high school girls. I was also a food service director at a summer camp for 16 years, so my kids could go to camp. And so there's, more working with people and finding ways to make people feel comfortable and happy and secure. I spent 20 years, like you said, living with and working with college students and high school girls. Can you imagine living with 65, 14 to 18-year-old girls? Most people laugh when I tell them that, but it was an absolute delight. And I think because what made me successful at that was that I have a lot of patience. I'm honest and
you would need a lot of patience.
a lot of patience. I'm honest and forthright, and the girls always appreciated that. So they knew they could trust me. I wasn't going to lie to them, and I wasn't going to allow them to cause me to lie for them. And so that ethics and integrity comes in with that. And so from there, I found out about the assembly, and that's kind of another story in and of itself, but which I'm happy to tell at any point if you decide you want me to.
Well, it's up to you. We have plenty of time. We're not in any hurry. We'd like to hear that story. I think it's important because we all have kind of our own story as to how we've been introduced to the assembly, and everyone has unique perspective.
Right.
Sometimes people can relate to different people, and they can say, well, that's kind of similar to me and I can relate to that. So
Okay.
if you don't mind sharing, we'd love to hear.
No, I'd be happy to. I just recently, we do a monthly state education call, and Oscar and I, you guys have heard of Oscar, I think, actually kind of worked together on that. And so this last one, I really actually went through and I came up with a basic history of our assembly, because we have an awful lot of people in our assembly that know nothing about the first 8 or 9 months of our assembly. So they don't know all that we've gone through and the challenges and the growing and the learning that we've gone through, and it helps to bring them up to speed. So one of the things that happened was, I guess it was 2021, we had two or three people who were part of our assembly who were on the national call for a while. And that was in the spring of 2021. And in the summer of 2021, a lot of people were coming together in St. Louis County at the county council meetings to try to make a difference with Sam Page, the executive, who was doing these extreme measures, just like they were all over the country, regarding COVID and masks and vaccines and all of that stuff. And people would come and talk and give proof and evidence and try to make a difference. Nothing mattered. And many of us got up and spoke several times. Well, a group of people got to know each other from being there every Tuesday night. And as a result of that, and being a little disgusted that clearly there wasn't anything we were going to do to make a difference at those meetings, we found out about the assembly. Some people did find out about National Assembly from one of the people that had been on the call. And so the result of that was that in September of 2021, a small group, and I wasn't part of that group at that point, a small group got together in a cafe and started talking about assembly. Well, prior to that, so in the spring and the summer, Bill Hermanson had begun researching and studying and writing all about the history of our country and what had been hidden from us. So his study and research developed into education presentations, and they were all in person. And so that's some of what was going on in that cafe, in that meeting, and education. And so more presentations were scheduled. Bill and I happened to go, and his wife and my husband go to the same church. And while I had been going to the council meetings, I really didn't understand all this other stuff. And he said to me, "You really should be a part of this." And I said, "No, I don't think that's for me." I still didn't understand. But he said it to me more than once. And I finally said, "Okay, I think I will. I'll get involved." And I started going to his education presentations and realized all the things that I didn't know as a teacher, that we hadn't been taught. None of us had been taught about our history, our country, everything that had been hidden from us. And as you can imagine, it's the same for all of us. You wake up one day and you realize that everything you ever thought was true was actually not. It was all a lie. And so you have two choices, I think, when that happens. You either get really excited and go, "Wow, I want to know everything I never learned. I want to learn as much as I can." Or you probably get depressed and go live in a cave. So I'm the person that is like, I love learning everything that I never knew. And it's not a disappointment to me. Nothing is surprising me. It's like, okay, and now I know more about that. And so, as a result of that cafe meeting, of the education presentations, everybody come together in person by November. So keep in mind that it started in August or September. By November, we had 44 people in a room assembling the state of Missouri.
That's wonderful. Wow.
And from there on, it's been a learning process ever since.
Yeah. Well, the word says, "My children were destroyed because of their lack of knowledge," right? And so we can turn a blind ear and eye to knowledge, or we can embrace it and step up and run with it. And it sounds like you took the second path, and that's exciting, really exciting. Ed, we'll give you plenty of time to chime in
Okay.
a little bit. I just wanted to say that, Louise, we were going to talk a little bit about some of the positive successes in Missouri. I kind of want to put that on hold for a moment,
Sure.
because I think what's really important now is that maybe we can, if you don't mind, maybe you can walk our viewers through the basic process or steps that they would need to do to set up their assembly. I know Ed will have something to say about this as well, and we can chime in.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
think it's important because so many people hear so much, and I try to simplify it and keep it as simple as possible. But there is a process, and since you went through it and were very successful at it, maybe you could kind of give us a little insight on that, and then we can talk about, a little bit more about Missouri and what you guys did that made you super successful. So
Sure. Thank you. And recognizing that every state is probably going to have their own process, but there are similarities in all of those. So what we do in Missouri is we vet people by our education presentations, or by asking them to read or watch certain things and be sponsored by people who have talked to them about the education that they're getting. So when there are 13 at a minimum, right, people in a county, and we encourage more, but some counties have assembled with only 13. When they are ready to assemble, we have a 3-step process, and it's a 3-meeting process, and they're not back to back. So it could be once a week, or it could whatever works for that assembly. The first meeting, we call it an A1, and that's kind of getting ready to assemble. And our state chief justice, which happens to be Bill Hermanson, runs that meeting. And then there are usually 2 or 3 other state members or more, if they choose to be there, that are also present. And at that meeting, I'm just going to kind of read my notes so I don't miss anything about what we do at that meeting.
No problem. We do that all
That's
the
okay. We review what the Jural Assembly is all about. So there's a review about that. They've already heard about it, but it's a review. And then we share parts of the covenant are shared. Going through the aspects of the day of assembly is shared. The 3 documents that they are going to be signing on the day of assembly, we go through those, see if there's any questions about that. Elections, what positions need to be elected and what those positions do, so they can begin thinking about who out of this group of 13 to 20 people are willing to step up and be an officer. And then answering any questions. And that takes 2.5 hours usually. And because sometimes there are a lot of questions, and then sometimes people will go ahead and join the state at that point. But then so that's the first part. The second part is the day of assembly. And on that day, we let everybody know that that's anywhere from 4.5 to 5 to 6 hours to do that. And part of what has sped that process up, at first it was lasting 6 or 7 hours because people needed to sign their documents that day, or people would come and they hadn't read the documents. And so it took more time for them to feel like they were willing to read them. And that has streamlined since then, so it doesn't take as long. So on that second day of assembly, we're reading and adopting organizational documents and going through the election process. And an initial recording secretary training goes on after that. One of the things that happens is at this point, up to this point, since I've been there for every one of these counties assembling, I also will take minutes on this day for them because they don't have a recording secretary yet. They don't quite know what they're doing. There are people taking hand notes because they've been asked to do that, but I will take minutes for them on my computer and then provide that for the recording secretary. And then they have a launching pad for that. I also will put on a spreadsheet their first roster with everybody's information. And that just kind of launches that county with some more information about how to maintain themselves. And then the other thing we have been doing here in Missouri is providing continued support for those positions and for that county. They know that they can call and ask any one of us questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? And you find that there's a fair amount of need for support, but usually the first couple of months. And then after that, there aren't as many questions because they no longer need, like a toddler doesn't need you to hold their hand. They can walk on their own now. And sometimes individuals don't have quite the patience for that. I do because of my work with students and college students. Some people feel like you should be able to do this on your own, forgetting the brainwashing we've all been through for so long. And so to me, that support and that help and that willingness to answer questions helps to eliminate some of that brainwashing that I've watched happen to students when they want you to always give them the answer, right? They want you to do it for them. They all of that. They've just gotten used to that.
Right.
And we can help each other work out of that and be independent on our own. So then the third step in assembling a county is the third meeting. And that could be anywhere. Sometimes a county will schedule that for their first county meeting, actual next county meeting, which is a month later. Sometimes they'll schedule it within a week or 2 weeks. But that meeting is to go over parliamentary procedure. One of the things we have in Missouri is, and I know several states do this as well, is we have, we're working a standing rules or a rules of order document that helps us with how to do a parliamentary procedure. Our other documents tell us what we are as a Jural Assembly, but this one tells us how to do it. And it helps, it makes everything impersonal. So you can't argue with each other when the parliamentary procedure says, no, this is how you make a motion,
Right.
or this is how you have debate, or it really has eliminated some of that. So that third meeting is going over the parliamentary procedure, practice making motions, doing some role playing so that they get used to it and how to run a meeting. And also at that meeting, they get back their original documents because copies have been made for the recording secretaries. And they make plans then for how to print their public notice in the county of the county settlement, and when they're going to do all of that. So I think I've mentioned everything there.
Yeah,
I think
very
that, so
thorough.
that's our process. It's a three-step process, and it's been pretty successful. It does mean going to these counties 3 different times, but it's well worth the time involved in doing that.
That's the
Plus,
commitment.
here's the plus. I feel fortunate. I get to meet everybody that's joining Missouri. I get to meet them. So do other people. Bill does. And so we become a family, and that helps when we come to state assembly meetings and everybody's in the same room and you're working to work through things together. We know it won't stay that way. Eventually, you won't be able to know every single person in the assembly, but right now we can.
Yeah, it's great. Ed?
So also, Louise, presumably you went in front of the existing de facto county to read your notice of settlement, correct?
We did. I'm in St. Louis County, and we were the first county to assemble, probably because most of our original assembly, we had several counties, but when we formed Missouri, but most of them were from St. Louis County. And we did go before them. They didn't know what we were reading to them, and they only looked up when the word habeas corpus was mentioned. But now that we have 15 counties, 16 soon, and we have our territory, some county councils are paying more attention.
Yeah.
Some newspapers are paying a little bit more attention. So there have been a few little hiccups to get around to accomplish what counties need to do for their notice.
So now every state is different in the amount of counties they need. I believe it's based on the original charter. Forgive me if I'm
Correct.
incorrect. And how many counties do you all need to be a settled state? Are you there? Have you gone through with being a settled state? Where are you at this point? Because
We need 15 counties and our territory,
okay,
and we have that. We achieved that last month. And
congratulations.
again, thank you. It's very exciting. And
Yeah.
we're continuing to move forward. We've got a number of people in various counties that are still kind of bringing people together for education. We have another county that's only needs a couple of more people and they're ready to assemble. So we're not sure what's next, but we're taking those steps to find out.
So Louise, do you all have grand jury in place yet or not?
No, not yet. Not yet. We've been working on education and assembling, and we know that that's coming. There are people who are learning and researching. Several people from our assembly have been on Rogers calls on Wednesday nights, and some have gone back and listened to all of them from the beginning.
Wow.
So there is, but we still have a long way to go to really learn all of that. And the goal is at some point is to have a guide, a manual that will tell us how to do that. So that's definitely next on our agenda.
Yeah. To go back to what you said before, I think you really hit on some key points on your first group meeting. And I think the biggest hesitation they have going forward is they just don't understand. And that comprehension is so important. And Ed uses the word understand, but they have to comprehend what it is they're doing, what the paperwork is that they're reading, what the oath is about, what
Right.
is really required of them. And so many people ask us that, and I think they get caught up a lot in the minutia of, well, this is what the assembly would like to do down the road. This is the things that we really want to do ultimately, and how is that backed up? How do we back up this process. But I think the process in the beginning that we've been trying to get through to people is just that we have to organize. We have to grow our assembly. We have to put our assembly in place and all of our assemblies in the county. And I think you all have stayed true to that mission. It's easy to get mixed up in the PFROGs and the grievances and all the other things. But if you stay true to the fact that you just want to settle each county at a time and get your state settled, I think that's what made you successful. Now you're, I think only the third, or I should say exactly the third state. I know Alaska, right? Missouri and
Alaska, Michigan, right,
Michigan and Missouri
and
now.
Missouri,
And that's
right.
exciting. I know New York is doing great, and Florida and Georgia, and there's many other states that are moving forward and continue to do the process, but we're learning from people like you, and that's why we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. I could also add that another thing that I think has, and I just assume that all states are doing this, but when Destry or Paul or anyone says something on the national call or his hard line or something like that, when they make a statement that everybody should know and understand this document, maybe because I'm the ComSec and I do send out a reminder each week about education opportunities and the next meeting time and place and things like that. I can sometimes include that under an education opportunity. For example, when it was mentioned on a national call, the importance of reading and understanding the contempt of Constitution, we all read it. Most counties read it together, and we read it in our state meeting. When it's mentioned that General Order 100 is really important to know and understand, and it was then placed on the landing page of the national website. A lot of people here in Missouri are listening to Jason's reading of that, or reading it themselves and trying to understand it better. So anytime those documents I always say this wrong, the Formation, Operations, and Functions Bylaws document, we're taking that seriously too. And counties are rereading that together and working to understand it, because there's a lot in there. And that's our foundation as an assembly. So understanding what that really means and what our role is with that. So we do try to encourage those kinds of things.
Sure. Ed, I'm sure you have questions. I just have one more. I know that, Louise, you've told me in the back channels when we talked on the phone and other texts and things, that there was one key element that you found was so important for the assemblies. And, with this world of telecommunications and what we're doing now with Zoom, and it's easier to sit in your home and just to do what you're doing and, feel like you're participating. I know that there's something that's really dear to your heart that you want to get out there to say, this is really important. What would that be if you could? It's
meeting in person. It's getting together in person. All of our assembly meetings are in person. None of them are over Zoom or free conference call or anything like that. Does that mean sometimes people can't attend? It does. But most people try to attend as much as they can. When we first assembled Missouri, we had I think it was 2 in-person meetings a month and 2 free conference call meetings a month. Within 2 months, it was clear that those phone call meetings were a deterrent, and they were not helping us to move forward and progress, because not everybody has a platform. Not everybody is heard. It just was, for us, it was a disaster. And so it wasn't very long, only a few months, before the assembly voted, because and that's another key element, is that no one person speaks or acts for the assembly. Everything is decided and done by the assembly, and we help each other remember that, because it's not innate. We have to remember those things. So we very quickly passed a motion that we only meet in person. And as we've grown, we have moved our in-person meetings to the middle of the state, so that the driving distance is as equal as possible for any assembly. We've also discovered that in a couple of counties that are in the middle of the state, their electric co-ops, we're able to have our meetings at no cost. Whereas at first we were having to pay a fair amount for our meetings. We had a church offer us their space early on, and that was at no cost. And so we were able to meet those needs that way. But in person is to me the most important thing. And then the other one I would add is it's a favorite question of many of us, and that is when you're talking to people, asking them the question, do you know what the Article 4 of the Constitution says? Article 4, Section 4. Do I have that right? Oh my gosh. And the one that says, the United States shall guarantee to every citizen a Republican form of government. Or I probably butchered that a little bit. I'm not really good at any rate. Then you ask the question, well, what is that? How did we lose it? What is it? And how do we get it back?
Right.
And isn't that what the assembly is all about?
Sure.
Is helping us to know and understand that. And that gets people's attention.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know, Ed, you're going to opine on this because Ed's a big advocate of in-person. And,
Oh,
we've
good.
become a society where, people don't really feel comfortable sometimes being on a video. And so you get people who will just put up an image. And now we've lost that interpersonal connection. And even this flat screen doesn't do it. And when we get together, some, magic happens and we develop relationships and we can touch and talk and feel emotion. And then we are a frequency. We're people with a frequency, and a consciousness is outside of us. And that also creates a unity. And Ed, do you want to, I know this is a big thing for you and you've preached this for a while. So.
Yeah, I think it's a excellent idea. We've just been kind of like attention deficit syndrome, kind of doing a bunch of things at the same time. And of course, with all of the shifts that are taking place energetically with the Schumann resonance, it's kind of hard to stay on target. But anyway, yeah, I think that's a good point to make. I still see the value of using platforms, like we're doing right now for this purpose, and for educational purposes as well. But yeah, I mean, I think meeting people is really key. Florida is a very long state. We're a huge peninsula, and we have 67 counties, and we have to assemble 20. So we have a ways to go, but thanks to Doug and his expertise with the PowerPoint and websites and so on, it really has taken us light years ahead of where we normally would be. And I've been listening to Roger and others for quite some time. So I feel a comfort level with common law. And I guess the biggest frustration we all have once we're formed up is, let's go get them. And we can't do that, obviously, because we just don't have the numbers yet. And then the other thing is, well, how do you enforce that? And right now it's kind of a big question mark. So I know that, first of all, we have to prove to ourselves that we can actually assemble and we can actually work together and we can educate one another. Because as you said, Louise, most people have no clue what we're talking about. None. And Article 4, Section 4 is a good starting point. Thank you for throwing that out to us. I got it. I caught it. And,
yeah,
it's just, to me, it's sort of become second nature. But for most people, oh, you got a problem, I'm going to go hire a lawyer. But do you know what BAR stands for?
yep.
And they go, well, no. Oh, okay. So you explain to them, and it just goes over their heads because they can't make the connection between allegiance to the crown and Article 4, Section 4. It's like, it's frustrating, but you have to be very diplomatic in what you do because you want to help people fundamentally. That's what it's all about, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think that in-person connections, education, not overselling the expectations. And I think the biggest question we always get, at least I've gotten in the past, is what have we accomplished and what can we do with what we have? Well, the reason you haven't accomplished anything is because you all are not doing anything. So we have to
Right.
be together to be able to accomplish things. Can I write writs? Yeah, I can write a quo warranto and a writ of mandamus and this and that. Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. However, we're not there yet. We have the knowledge and the expertise, whether it is with Roger or Destry or Paul or whomever, books of all types that are there. However, the key point is, you don't go and fight a war until you have all your battalions in place. So congratulations to you in Missouri.
Right.
Your battalion's all set up. And, I'm a big fan of General Montgomery, although I love Patton.
Me too.
General Montgomery wouldn't move forward until all his logistics were in place. It wasn't one of those go for the gold and what do they call them? We called them all General Blood and Guts. Blood and Guts. His guts are blood. Something like that. That was General Patton. Bottom line is education, as I see it right now, and of course, face to face is the only way to get things done, because people do not comprehend the documents. They do not comprehend Article 4, Section 4. They do not comprehend common law. They don't comprehend that we are superior in our position relative to the civil servants.
Right.
And they have kept the name civil servants. They're uncivil, they're not servants, and they think are our masters, which is ridiculous, right? So
Well, and then the 13th Amendment too, right?
Say what?
I said the true 13th Amendment as well. Throw that in there.
Well, yeah, it's interesting at the national, at the Florida council level. Some people say, well, that was never ratified. I say, yeah, I found the documents that said it was ratified. Anyway, bottom line, we do what we can with this little booklet Constitution, tell people, it may not be all accurate and everything after the 13th really is not lawful. What?
Right.
So, you go, oh, everything since 1871 is not relevant to us. Well, what do you mean? So it gets complicated. And anyway, so we admire your accomplishments in Missouri. We wish you more successes. And obviously down the road, you want your statewide grand jury, which you can do easily now that you have all these counties set up, as long as you have the right people in place. But of course, you can also do a common law court of record anytime you need it, right? As
We
long
have
as
to
you
learn that. You're right.
I'm
Right.
sorry.
I said we've got, those are some things we need to be in the process of learning.
Well, those things can be done immediately, because as long as you have an administrative investigator that can validate whether there's a true bill or not, and the evidence is undeniable, you can go straight to a common law court of record. You don't have to drag it through a grand jury situation. So, but those are like, categories, like a black and white situation. Boom, the evidence is there, no discussion. And you put it through the process of the common law court of record and give the accused an opportunity to respond. And, generally when you're dealing with de facto civil servants, they will not, they will hold back. So little do they realize that they're self-incriminating themselves by not responding. And then when you start your next step, which is to start asking for over here in Florida, we have it is form number 6, where they have to disclose all their personal unencumbered assets so that you can actually lien them in order to compensate the victim. And it can get real hairy. I don't know what you have in Missouri, but I'm sure there's some kind of disclosure laws there too.
If there are, I'm not familiar with it. Yeah.
So there's that, and then of course all the surety bonds and the oaths of office, and they're in violation of all of that stuff. So anyway,
Yeah.
And I would say that there are certainly plenty of people here that want to get started, and they really want to do all that you're talking about, I think we've tried to stay focused at this point on getting assembled. And then those would be the next steps after we've done all of that process. I love that Destry is always reminding us, until we've lived the experience, we really can't own it. So I think we're all living it in different ways, but there's still so much to learn and figure out. And I could add as well that, you know, there have been people in Missouri who have asked, you know, can Bill share his education in writing? I'd like to read it. Or can he just come on to a Zoom call and do his presentation that way? Now, it is on national, but that's a little different, or something like that. And we have stayed true to saying no. Bill has stayed true to that, because it doesn't it doesn't have quite the same result that we've had from being in person. So we are keeping it that way in person. Anyone is free to go and write their own presentation. And we have some members who have been working on that in Missouri. We have one county further down south that there are some unique ways that counties have gone about bringing more people in and recruiting in their counties. And I'm happy to share that if you would like, or that could be another time. Do you want me to go into that, or?
Sure. Yeah, please do.
So we have one county who has doubled their membership, and one of the things they do is that they offer an education early on in their meeting, and people come to that education piece, and then they invite them to leave, and then they have their business meeting. They've passed out flyers all over their county, and that's brought people to want to know more. And so they're getting people going that way. And some counties are starting to do that same thing. A couple of other counties have scheduled things like, it could be like a talk with Tom Sykes, or we have a member who gives a wonderful talk on the Tavistock Institute, starting in the 1913, and how we've all been actually brainwashed and MK Ultra'd through that for decades. And but some people have done how to use it workshops, inviting just the general public, how to set up a ham radio or walkie-talkies if something happens, how to do a personal defense class, or how to do some prepping, all kinds of things. And so they've had people come to that. And then as a part of that, they've offered them some information or handed out a flyer about assembly. And then they've gotten people interested in knowing more about their county assembly based off of that. So there's just been a unique way. And another county, a friend of mine in that county started going to school board meetings and county council meetings, and just observing all the people and noticing who was particularly disgruntled with what was going on, and would go up to them afterwards and say, do you want to know how you can make a difference? And would start to offer them some information. And then another thing happened in a Panera. Bill was having a conversation with some people that wanted to know more about assembly, and the person sitting in the booth next to them, when they left, stood up and said, "What were you guys talking about? I want to know more." And that person became our IT officer. So there's just all different kinds of unique ways. And I know every state has all different kinds of things that they are figuring out on how to recruit others. And sometimes when we can share these ideas, it helps us launch in a new direction to bring people in that are ready. I also like that Destry made a comment on one national call that only about 1 in 100 are ready for the assembly, are awake enough to know and understand what it's about. That's an interesting thing as well.
Right. So you have to be realize when you prospect or you're putting it out there that, you know, not everybody is going to be interested, and you have to have a tough skin and be willing to look around. I always say, you know, if you find one person like yourself, consider yourself lucky in a year. And I'm not saying it's going to take that long, not now, but if you do find one person like yourself, that combination can do incredible things. You don't need a massive amount of people to get things done and to move. That's not how the founding fathers set things up.
Right.
One of the things I do want to get to a little bit before we sign off is the concept of restore, not reform. This is something I've been really pushing on the program lately, and actually forever. And you know, there's a lot to talk about here. We can go into all kinds of things, you know, deep state operations that are messing with the assembly and tarnishing the word assembly itself and drawing people away from the assemblies. But I think it's important, as you put a message out there, that people are looking for, they're so angry, they want reform. You know, they want reform. I think 90% of the Republican parties and the groups that are coming together for politics, all they want is reform. They want to put that person in office that's going to fix things.
Right.
And we are not, as an assembly, about reform. We are about restoration. And we must restore our republic. And so that is a real key element, I think, to get across right away when you're talking to somebody and kind of feel out where they're at and what their view is on that, because you can really butt heads and come up against a rock wall if they're not open to the idea of restoration versus reform. And so did you run into that? How do you all handle that? I know
A
it's kind
little
of a
bit.
tough question, but
No, I'm glad you brought it up because it's something I wrote down as well, that using the word restore, I think, is really key. Because if it's not restore, then people are thinking, I mean, I'm sure you get the same questions. People saying, well, you're trying to replace the government. You're trying to create a new one. You're trying to, are you going to do a coup? You know, all kinds of things. And when we're able to articulate that this is about restoring our Republican form of government, restoring what was taken and what has been hidden for such a long time, that helps people to understand a little bit better. And what they don't understand is that to do all those other things is actually treason, right?
Yep.
Restoring is bringing back what was given to us from our founding fathers, and what ended up disappearing after the South walked out and they went sine die. And so, and we know, you know, the history of what happened after that. And I mean, there's so much to learn about all of that, but we have to, that's why our counties are all, our states are all different, right? That's why we need 15 counties and a territory. Why you said you need 20 counties. I think Georgia needs 8 counties and 2 territories. It's different for every state because their situation before the South walked out and we went sine die, everybody's situation was different. And that's what we have to restore. And we have to go back to our organic state constitutions and get to know those as well. And, but that's part of that restoring that I know that you're talking about. And you're right, people misunderstand.
yeah.
I
And that's
think
where a
if I
lot
could
of the
just,
confusion comes in. Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
yeah, the key thing, I mean, those are lovely words and you're correct. Ultimately, they're just really two things. It ain't fixable. The problem is just too big. So we're just going to set that aside and we're going back to something simple to keep it simple, stupid, right?
You're right, it isn't fixable.
So, you know, there isn't a better way. And then going back to what was intended for this particular part of the world, which was essentially, you know, just keep the government out of our hair and let us just do what we're good at, which is to let our own entrepreneurial spirit do what needs to be done to be of service, could create products, etc. And, you know, get the government out of everything. And unfortunately, I mean, I love the cause, and I think about it even more, of getting together on a regular basis in person, human beings, you know, pressing the flesh, because it's going to make people realize you got to do something. You really have to do something. And it's not a one and done every election. You know, you vote for your favorite candidate, the cutest, the most braggart, whatever the case is, the veteran. It doesn't work. I mean, 153 years of it doesn't work do we not get? It's time for change. And if we don't do it now, I don't know when we'll ever do it. So the bottom line is you can't fix it. And we got to go back to a most simple expression of government, which is the least government is the best government, period.
Well, there you have it.
I agree. And if I could add that another plus of everyone coming together, getting to know each other, seeing each other face to face, is we discover that we're all the same.
Yeah.
We all love and cherish and want the same things. Many of us have very similar experiences. I've also learned personally that there's a lot we're a lot have there are a lot of things that are going on in our state and every state that I never knew was even possible. I never knew. I mean, this is how naive I was. I never knew that people actually worshiped Satan. But I know people now who know that for a fact. And I mean, and all the other things that we know have to be taken care of in all of our states. When we come together as human beings and get to know each other, one, we support each other in all these endeavors. We meet people who have had some horrific experiences and others who can help support them through that. That can't happen over a flat screen.
Yep.
And to me, that's what brings our country back together is,
Mhm.
I mean, how often do we, I live in St. Louis. Do neighbors come out and really talk to each other? Not very often. But I also have a rural background, and it's very different when you live in a town where everybody knows everybody, and you
Yeah.
live in a city where they've wanted us to all live, where you don't really know very many people.
Yeah.
Um, so that aspect of being together is another really important part.
Yeah. Well, the Romans were very successful. Give them bread and entertainment, and they've been doing that forever, right?
Right, right.
So this is an example of why this kind of medium is good, though, because you're quite a far distance from where we are, and yet we can still have some kind of a relationship. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. It's
Absolutely.
really incredible what you're doing over there. And I always like to say, and I'm going to tell you this, you're a patriot, but to me, you're more than a patriot. You're a hero. And I don't mean that lightly. And I say that with all affection and truth, because it takes a hero to go out and do day after day after day after day to be committed and to do the long journey it takes to get to where you want to go and to set your goals. And you guys have done that in your state. We're very proud of you. We're excited for you. You're a shining light, and we're looking towards that. Many other states are going to follow your path. And we're really grateful for you to come on here and share it. And you're welcome anytime to come back on. Whenever the smallest thing happens that's a success in your state and you'd like to share it, that's what this platform's for. We're here so that people can use this to prospect a circle of influence that maybe they wouldn't have got to before. And like you said, some of your counties are doing, we do that here in WTPN. We talk about, how to grow food and, what the metal markets are about and what's going on. And it's not to profit. We don't, sell anything here. We're not doing affiliate programs, but to share information, to educate people, and to draw people in from all walks of life to get into the assembly. And our platform is here to mirror the assembly in a way. And so we're very grateful for your coming on, and you're always welcome. And I just wanted to thank you for all you do. So
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. And I'm grateful for your platform. I really am. It's how we all learn a lot of different things, and I'm so glad you're doing it. And I don't know if we have time, but I have a short little story that might be helpful
Sure.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
share. And it's just something that we can all think about. My years of living with students, I did all my teaching through stories. And this one is short. It's about a scientist but it applies to our assemblies. It's about a scientist who was observing a caterpillar, a butterfly working its way out of its cocoon. And he was taking notes and taking pictures and watching every little step. And he was doing this for hours and watching this butterfly start to wiggle its way out. And after a long time, the scientist began to feel sorry for the little butterfly because he was having to work so hard. And he thought, I'll just help him out just a little bit. So he took his little knife and he cut a tiny little slit in the cocoon, just a tiny one, just to help him get out a little easier out of the cocoon. And then he continued watching the butterfly work its way and struggle and get out of the cocoon. And he did get out faster than he would have normally. However, when he got out of the cocoon, his back legs would not work. And without his back legs working, the butterfly couldn't live and survive. And so we have to struggle sometimes to be strong enough to withstand the deep state, the incursions. We have to be strong enough to withstand and work through the differences of opinions and how we learn to work together. And so I appreciate that each state is learning to have that struggle in many, many different ways, because it will make each one strong. And then that's what we need.
Yeah, very good.
That's a
Appreciate
good
that.
analogy. Thank you very much for sharing it. Well, we
You're
wish you
welcome.
Godspeed, Louise, and
Well, thank you. You as
let's
well.
let's stay. Yeah, thank you very much. We'll stay in touch and share our own successes, yeah, with you. So thank you.
I'm going to
Great.
just do
Well,
our,
let me know when you're putting this out, because I've had a lot of people asking.
okay. I'm going to just do our traditional closing. If you'll stay on with us, and we'll just say our quick goodbyes. I just want to remind
Sure.
everyone, as we always do, that we the people is a term that declares that the Constitution derives its power not from the king, certainly not from who we call our president right now, or Congress, but from the people themselves. And this podcast channel is the people's channel. Please contact us and let us know what you'd like to hear and see. Share a link below and follow us on Rumble. We want to thank you all for listening. We appreciate all your support. And in the words of Thomas Jefferson, always remember, when the government fears its people, there is freedom. I want to thank Louise today and Ed and everyone for listening. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, Louise. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now. Take care.
Bye.